There, now you got the light
Yeah,
on what you
it
hit.
was,
Okay, I think we're ready, Mrs.
He
Payne.
found the right button.
Maybe if you
Yeah.
could tell us who you are and who your mother, a little bit about the family, and a little bit about what you remember in Syracuse,
Okay.
and then we'll just chat.
Okay, well, I'm Reta Payne. I was born in Woodruff, Utah, April the 30th, 1894. I'm next to the youngest in a family of 8. My father died when I was 2 years old, leaving mother with 7 children, the oldest not 16, and the youngest, my youngest brother Cyril, was born in November after father passed in August. And we lived there. Mother wove carpets after father passed away for a number of years. And then when the older children were big enough to take care of us younger ones, mother took a course in nursing, and she got her diploma as a nurse in obstetrics. And we stayed there at Syracuse, and I went to school for a couple of years, and then mother was not very happy there. There was not enough work after she got her diploma as a nurse. There was not enough to earn a living. She had to do other things. And with the family of 8 of us, how mother kept shoes on our feet, our tummies full, I'll never know. But she did, and we were always well fed, and we were well clothed because the oldest sister, Sophia, mother sent her to Bountiful, and she took a course in sewing and tailoring. And we used to have clothes. I had my clothes from the older sisters. They cut them down and turned them inside out or wrong side out, and wore some and make your coats or dresses. And then with our moccasins, mother would take the backs of overalls and make us moccasins to keep our feet warm up when we were around in the evening. But there was never anything wasted. Everything was taken care of. And when I was 6, there was Edith Ashton and Ada Tingy and I. It was on a Sunday afternoon, and we wanted to get some Pussy Willows first year at school. And we wanted to get some Pussy Willows for the teacher. And mother said, well, that's all right, but don't go to Tingy's because that's a gathering place for all the kids' Sundays. Tingy's always went to church, and they had a place where we could play out. But anyway, we went down to the creek to get the Pussy Willows, and we couldn't get them on this side of the creek, the side we were on. So Harold Tingy had a big gray mare, and he came across the creek, and we 3 got on that horse and went across the creek to get the Pussy Willows. And when we got across the creek, Harold stuck a stick under the horse's tail, And of course it bucked, and I was on the front, and the other girls started going off, and as they fell, I fell, and the horse stepped on my arm. And they went, Mother was at church, and they went to church. Mother came. My oldest brother put a team on a white top buggy. And Mother sat in the back seat and held me in her arms so the jar of the buggy wouldn't hurt my arm. And I've had a stiff arm from that all my life. But that was one of the memories of the Woodruff to me, was falling from a horse and all those good neighbor kids that we had so much fun with. But then when Mother used to nurse, she had two sisters in Syracuse. Aunt Kate Stoker, which everybody knows, used to go out and deliver the babies because she was not licensed. And the bishop wrote Mother and said, we're in need of a midwife. And Mother moved to Syracuse in May of 1904. And I went to school at, I don't know whether the school's still standing or whether it's torn down.
The Gailey School?
No, there was a church, and then the school up by Rampton's.
It's there.
It's still there.
They
Oh, that's
remodeled
right.
it.
They've remodeled it, they added on.
Uh-huh. But that's where I went to school, and then when we had a high school, the high school was up on the corner across from Gailey's and on next to Pete Christensen, I think. And it burned down. And some of them went on to finish their school, but I couldn't. We had no way of getting anywhere. But I worked in the factory, but I was at home with Mother, and Mother took in boarders. We boarded the school teachers for years. And
Where did you live there in Syracuse?
right where the place is now, that house that I don't know who lives in it now.
Kano's, they're south of where Ray
It
Kano
was
West
it was right.
where
of the old
Kano was.
where Francis Wickle used to live.
No, Francis
where,
lived in the house.
Sophie and
Just
Tom Ashton.
the next house was where Francis. And then the Tolman built a house, and Mother's house still stands. And I don't know, Elmer bought the home. And then my sister Sophia and her husband, they put another apartment to the west. And Sophia and George lived there. But Syracuse was well established when we moved. And when they built the factory, of course I worked in the factory when it was down in the bottoms, the old canning factory. And Elva and I, that's my other older sister, we walked from where we first lived up in the Barlow place down to the old canning factory down, they called it in the bottoms. It was down, I think it was just north of where Uncle Joe Bodley lived.
On 4000 West there, I think.
Is that what it is now? And there was Uncle Joe Bodley and Criddles and Kiddies and Mannings and Paynes, and they were all down in that area. But then when they built when we moved into the home that's still standing, they built the canning factory that's just a mile, not quite a mile north of Mother's home. And the men that contracted it and the men that were building, they put up tents in the lot between Mother's home and Walker's store. And they would sleep there nights, but Mother boarded them while they were building the canning factory.
You know what year that was, Sister Payne?
Oh, let's see, I imagine it would be along maybe in 10 or 11, 1910 or 11. Because it may have been about 10 or 11, because I was just a young girl, and I know that, but we enjoyed Syracuse, and then I did lots and lots of singing. I loved it, and Mother bought an organ, and we were close to the church, and Mother's place was kind of a gathering place, and if people were needing to practice a song or anything, they'd come to Aunt Esther's because we had the organ there. And then when I started music lessons, I started under Hiram Walker. But we didn't do much practicing. He liked to sing and I did too, and we did more singing than we did organ work. But when I started vocal lessons, well, at first, on Saturday mornings, I would get up and hook the horse to the buggy and go drive to the Oregon Short Line depot, leave the horse and buggy there and get on the train, go into Ogden and take my music lesson and come back. And I paid for my music lessons with butter and eggs. Professor Call had come from Salt Lake to Ogden. He had a studio there. And then after I started, there were quite a number of others in Syracuse thought they'd like to sing. So Saturday mornings, for about a year, I'd get up, hook the horse onto the buggy and go up to the Bamberger depot and get Professor Call, bring him down, and he used our living room, or we called it our parlor, and his students from Syracuse would come to Mother's and take their lessons. And then he got so busy, had so many students in Ogden and Salt Lake, those that wanted to, we had to go to Ogden for our music lessons.
Do you remember who else took lessons with you about that time?
Oh, no, I really don't.
Okay.
I just don't recall who they were. It's been so long back that I know that was our Saturday routine. But there was about 8 or 10 that started, but they didn't continue on. They didn't go to Ogden to take their lessons, but I did.
You mentioned the Oregon Railroad Short Line. Where was the station for this? Where'd you go to catch the train?
Clearfield.
There at the Clearfield Junction, Syracuse Junction?
No, it was, well, no, it was the Clearfield Oregon Short Line Depot. They had quite a nice depot. And it was,
That was after.
I can't tell you, it just was right there in the center of Clearfield.
They're by Smith's Cannery?
Not far from it.
About right there, huh?
There,
Okay.
not,
Years before that, Sister Payne, it was known as Syracuse Junction.
oh, was it?
About the turn of the century, about 1900.
Well, it likely was, because
then
I know Clearfield is organized. They belonged to the Syracuse Ward when we first moved there.
Now you sung, you do some singing professionally?
No, I never ever charged for anything. I went all over the county, sang, and Mother said, God has given you this talent. Now use it for the blessings and the pleasures of others. And she always made it possible for me to go whenever I was invited, and I went all over. I loved it. And I never ever kept my mouth shut. If I was working, I was singing, and if I was driving the horse and buggy home, Mother could hear me before I got there, because I was always singing.
Did you have somebody that traveled with you that played for you?
No. Just usually your organist would in your ward or funerals. I did lots of singing at funerals and weddings and 4th and 24th of July celebrations, and usually if you were going to Kaysville, you'd know, well, there's Myrtle Sheila. Myrtle was her last name, Myrtle. But you knew she'd be there. And after Clearfield was organized in later years, there was good accompanist there. Edith Draper used to play, I got to where if I was singing at Roy, I'd know who to call. Of course, we didn't have a telephone for so many years, nor lights. And what a delight it was when we got the telephone and the lights. But you get so acquainted with your wards and the people who would be playing the organ or piano for your choir or your congregational singing. My music they could always pick it up. But I used to try to get there early enough to go to practice with them before.
Now, Aunt Esther, would you tell us a little bit about your mother? She was quite a help to the community there in health and delivering children.
Mother was the only midwife there for years, and she worked with Dr. Tanner, and then she worked with Dr. Think of it in a minute or two. For
Gleason?
years, Mother would go and deliver these babies, and she stayed at the home until for 4 or 5 days to take care of the mother and the baby. Of course, they didn't let a mother get up till the 10th day. And but Mother delivered over 1,100 babies.
1,100. Wow.
Yeah, and of course, Mother was known everywhere as Aunt Esther, like Aunt Kate Stoker. It was.
And they were sisters.
Yes.
I didn't know that until today.
And Martha Thurgood was another sister.
From West Point?
Did she go by buggy and wagon?
No, she had the buggy, the horse and buggy. And she did, of course, when they'd need her in the night, someone always had to come and get her to go and to deliver these babies. And she enjoyed it. And Mother was going, she delivered a baby at Raz Fisher's place. Oh, it had been a month or two before. And Mother was going along this Sunday morning I don't know what mother she was going to go to take care of, but anyway, she had been to Fisher's and stayed and had delivered this baby. And this Sunday morning, as Mother was driving along the bluff road, this little Virginia Fisher was out playing in the yard. Mother stopped and she said, well, hello, Virginia, how are you this morning? And this little Virginia looked up and she said, oh, my Helen, Esther, don't stop here. She says, that little devil you brought them for is bald ever since you brought him. But Mother enjoyed her work.
Did she midwife just in Syracuse or other communities around?
And she was at Syracuse and Clearfield and over at Summit Layton. She was Whitlock. She worked with Dr. Whitlock, and he had his office at Layton. It was across the street from the old Adams store upstairs. And that's where I was when Dr. Whitlock took my appendix out. It was in that little hospital they had. But Mother worked with him, and then, of course, with Dr. Tanner after Whitlock left.
Do you remember any of the old celebrations, the 4th of July, the
Oh,
24th?
goodness, yes, they had a Bowery where the amusement hall is. And that used to be a Bowery, and they'd have their the 24th of July was the one that they would always have a big, celebration. They always had a program and races and treats for us kids. They always, Christmas time, they always had a nice Christmas program. And of course, we had nothing in the way of amusements other than what we created ourselves. And we used to go in a group and have sleigh rides. And we had no way of getting any place other than horse and buggy, and we used to go or there'd be 4 of us in the buggy, and the old sleigh rides and the hay rack rides, and then maybe a group of us would get together and have a candy pull or popcorn and candy. Or I know one night we were all out, and I said, well, what'll we do? Let's do something. And I said, well, let's go home, and we'll have a oyster stew. We went home, and we didn't have enough milk. Mother always said, well, bring your company home. I think there were 6 or 8 of us, and that had been out. We didn't have enough milk when the boys went out and milked the cow about 10:30 or 11. So we'd have milk enough for for our oyster stew.
That sounds good.
It was good. It was fun.
I was raised on oyster stew.
Oyster stew and milk toast. And,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
What stores and businesses was there in Syracuse when you was a young girl?
but there was only the one store, and that's Dan Walker had the store right, well, where it's, I don't know whether it's still there now or not, the old, and then Jim Walker had a store down in the bottoms where the folks down, they didn't have to drive clear up to Syracuse, but they were brothers, and that was the only store we had. And Dan Walker would take his white top and go into Ogden. He'd have to drive with the team, and he'd go in once or twice a week and get the commodities to sell. And I don't know where he got his yardage goods, but he had everything there. He had shoes and lumber, and of course we had no green vegetables or any perishable things. But he'd go in and buy a pair of shoes or overalls or yardage goods or a penny candy. And
Did Elmer Sessions have a little cabinet shop there in connection with Walker store at one time?
no,
He didn't do any building there. Cabinets.
Elmer did lots of building, but he didn't have a cabinet shop to my knowledge. Elmer got his carpenter training. He went up to Logan, and he and Lawrence Criddle went to Logan and were up there rooming together. And that's where he took his training for as a carpenter.
You mentioned the canning factory, having worked in the canning factory in the lower part of Syracuse. That's a lot of people now don't realize there was a cannery down there.
Well, there surely was. Yes, and that's when they used, they had to scald their tomatoes and bring them to you in tubs. They had the old tin tubs, and I wasn't tall enough to reach the table, so I stood on a box and peeled tomatoes. And then, of course, after they built the one at Syracuse, that's had the tomatoes that go on a belt, on a pulley, and we each had our little,
Station or
we
position?
each had our little sinks that we could reach in and put the tomatoes off the belt into our sink. And that's when we peeled them for 3 cents a bucket. And then that was when it was down in the bottoms. And then when they had this in there at Syracuse, we got 5 cents a bucket. But we could peel them pretty fast because they were modern enough, the equipment, that if you get them hot, that
Old settlers.
You remember any of the, do you have any stories of some of the older settlers or comments on some of your neighbors or people?
Oh, I don't know what kind of stories you want.
Well, they ought to be clean stories.
Oh, I think of old Bishop Cook. He was like to me. He was the bishop when we moved to Syracuse, and we had lots of good bishops, but Bishop Cook was, I was frightened to death of his wife, Aunt Hannah, and she was as sweet as she could be, but they were so extreme in their general attitude. Bishop was gentle and always just so kind, but Aunt Hannah was, I guess it was because of me, I don't know, but she always seemed more stern and you couldn't get close to her.
Where did he live when he was a bishop?
He was down, well, they're on the corner by the way, just west of Syracuse, a mile, they're on the corner at the bluff, right on the, just at the top of the bluff. I think Sam Cook had a house close to it.
Now, was the tithing yard there when you was a little girl?
No,
That was ahead of that,
it was
possibly.
before that time. No, I don't remember that at all. And then Brother Nalder was bishop, Frank Nalder, and Arnold Miller were bishops in the quite a long time back. I've been married 75 years, and we moved up here after I was married. We lived at Clearfield, and then we moved up here in 1918. So
A lot of years ago.
a long time back.
I think we hadn't got the recorder going when you told us how old you was. So it's on there. Tell us again, would you, how old you are?
I will be 95 the 30th of this month, a week from tomorrow. I think I'm about the only one that was in our class at school. I'm sure I am.
It's still alive, huh?
Is still alive.
How many members do you have in your family?
I had in my Joe and I had the three. We had 2 girls and a boy. And Catherine married and had 2 boys. And Lucille married and has 2 girls and 1 boy. And Garth has 2 daughters. And I had the 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Then I have 25 great-grandchildren and 6 great-greats.
Amy, now, would you like to just hold that picture in your hands and I'll zero in on that picture
You
and
bet.
get a close-up on that? Okay, and this is
This is Lucille's family.
and showing the 5 generations.
5 generations.
Okay, we've got it there.
And that was taken July the 24th, 1988.
88, huh? Just
I
last
think
July.
last July.
Mm.
Do you have any other pictures you'd want to share with us?
Oh,
We hadn't prepared you for it, but if you did, we could get it on.
I don't know. Uh, I think you've had about enough of me.
No.
You might want this picture of Joe and Garth because, see, Joe was raised in Syracuse. And this is taken when Garth was 6 years old. It's,
That's fine that way.
that's,
Now tell us who that is now.
well, that's Joe Payne. That's my husband that I married in the LDS Temple in Salt Lake, January the 7th, 1914. And Joe was raised in Syracuse. Grandma Payne had a big family, and I'm sure anyone that knew Syracuse in their earlier years knew all the Paynes.
Who was his father?
George.
George
the salt
Payne.
people.
And then he had his oldest sister was, they called her Maggie, and she married Joe Maybe. And then there were Maggie and Henry and Joe and John, and John married Verna Steed from Syracuse. And then they moved out here also. But,
Now
and then
you're-
there was Hattie and Katie and Dora that all lived down. And they lived in the house that
Nora Payne?
Earl and Della live on that. And Nora Payne lives in the old Payne place where Joe was raised.
Now Nora Payne was telling us that part of that home, her George Payne got mud from the lake shore and made the adobe.
That's,
That's part of that home now that still stands.
well, and you see, George Payne and Cap Davis put the first buffalo over on Antelope Island.
Oh, did they?
They came to Montana and bought, I don't know how many head of buffalo, and they shipped them down on the train to Clearfield. And then they drove them from Clearfield down to the Payne place. And then they took them over on some kind of well, they had to row them over. See, there was no other way.
Kind of on a barge or something
Uh-huh.
like that. huh?
Uh-huh.
You know that they have quite a buffalo herd now that they're building up on the Antelope Island?
Well, that's what I understood. But Cap Davis and Grandpa Payne put the first buffalo over on that island.
He was also, wasn't he, in mining one time when that, there on Antelope Island?
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of mining did they do? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I don't know. He did a lot of shoveling salt. They used to have bins that they had there on the lake shore, and then when the winds came up, it would blow the waves into these bins, and that's where the salt was. And then they would take loads of salt, the coarse salt. Of course, they had to go by wagon, but they'd take a wagon load at a time, maybe 2 wagon loads to Salt Lake to the refinery.
Well, that's interesting on your husband's side, too.
Yes, that's
appreciate
Joe's
that.
father. Yeah, that's Joe's father. But Joe said he'd hauled many loads of salt, coarse salt, to Salt Lake to the refinery.
Do you have any memories of the dance pavilion or the swimming resort or anything down there?
Well, they did have, I think, I don't remember the dance pavilion down in the bottoms.
Don't you?
They built the pavilion of the dance hall in Syracuse not too long after we moved there, but it was a Bowery. But I never ever was to the
Down
dance.
the lake.
No.
They used to play baseball. Do you remember any baseball teams?
Oh my goodness, yes. Roy Briggs and Ole and Judson Stoker and Wallace Gailey, Dave Thurgood, and they used to play Hooper quite a lot, and Clearfield. Of course, there was quite a rivalry between Syracuse and Clearfield, and they used it was just a delight to see them play ball. And then when they had what they called the Cox's Army, and that was Wilcox's that lived at Clearfield, and they had these 8 boys, and then my mother delivered a pair of twins. Paul said, "And Esther, we didn't want a girl. It was they had just one girl before that." And Mother said, "You didn't want a little baby sister?" And said, "No, we wanted 2 boys. Then we'd have our baseball night." But they used to walk from Clearfield down to Syracuse to school before they got a school there, and they called them the Walking Cox's Army.
Walking Cox.
We used to like to go to Hooper, watch them play baseball, and then had the baseball night there at Syracuse. And I think that was either there by the Bowery or back of the school. I don't recall which.
Maybe I think it'd be nice, Sister Payne, if you took just a minute and tell us about you and your husband. Did you start the mortuary here, and a little bit about that, so we know about your life?
Well, we came up here in 1918 and went over, bought a farm, and Joe was no farmer. His brothers were all good farmers, and then he worked in the store, in the mercantile store, and hired a man to run the farm. And then he sold the farm, and we moved right into Paul. And he worked for the Amalgamated Sugar Company for a number of years. And then we decided we were going into the mortuary business. We tagged a hearse all our life. We sang all over this country, and I sang long before we were ever up here, but we just sang everywhere. Religion made no difference. And so we went down to Larkin's and worked for Larkin's, lived in Ogden, and he worked both in Salt Lake and Ogden to get his training. And then we decided to come back up here and go into the mortuary business. And we thought we'd go into Rupert, and they didn't seem to want us in Rupert. They had a mortuary. Of course, we had to go in competition here too. But when we came over here, we went over the zoning law very, very carefully in our location. And there was a hospital down on Conan Avenue that they had closed up. So we decided, we had a companion or a partner with us. It was Bill, he and his wife, and he was licensed, Idaho licensed. And we moved over here in this hospital building the 15th of November 1931. And the evening, this hospital was in a residential area, but there was a mortuary that was operating in a residence in the east part of Burley here, and we felt we were perfectly all right, and the zoning area and all. But the night before Thanksgiving, the sheriff served summons on us to vacate. Our neighbors had to sign the petition that we were public nuisance. They didn't want a mortuary in that area. So we went to court, and we had until April to get out. But we went to court and we lost. We had to move. So that's when we bought this place here. And we had been wanting to buy it, and we felt they wanted it to belong to a Spokane casket company. And the man that was renting it, he was a lawyer here in town, and he kept wanting to sell it to us, and we felt like he'd come up on his rent and come up on his rent. And but anyway, Joe was out on a funeral, and I was here, and the son of the owner of this building came in, and he said that his father passed away and they wanted to get rid of this place. It wasn't paying enough for them to keep it. And I said, well, what do you want for it? He told me, and I said, that's too much. And he said, what do you give me for it? I told him, and he said, that isn't enough. And I said, well, let's split the difference. And when Joe got home, I bought the mortuary.
Did he give you a rough time on it, or he was pretty agreeable, huh?
Oh, he was so thrilled. But I didn't, I gave this owner a check before he left to go up to the attorney, because the attorney, he wanted the $1,500 more for it. And he'd upped our rent, but he never paid any difference. In the time we started, he sent the company that owned it the same rent all the time, and he kept that difference all that time. And, but no, Joe was very, very happy about it.
So you've been in the mortuary business, or did do, for many years.
I've been right here in this building. It'll be 58 years this November.
A lot of years.
See, we were in business just 10 years when Joe passed away. And then I ran it. I was licensed. And of course that was a blessing, or I couldn't have gone on with the business. And I had hired help until Catherine and Colin came, and they both went to Frisco and got their license. Took a year in the mortuary science school there. And then they stayed with me until Garth had been into the service. Garth was 3 years in the service. And then he came back and went to Frisco for a year to the mortuary school of science. And then he came back and he was with me, and then after he'd been with me, I don't know how many years, then we formed a partnership. And then after about 45 years, I sold him my half. So no, we've been right here in this building 58 years.
Is there any, we appreciate that information. I think that's good to have it down. Is there anything else you can think of that you'd like to tell us?
I think I've gathered about quite a lot.
It's been very interesting.
And
We appreciate it.
It's been so nice to have you come and kind of know a little bit about Syracuse again. That's a very, very dear place to me.